Okay, welcome to ACT and Grammar video number 4. Today we're going to be talking about run-ons. Okay, this is a really frustrating topic for me because you guys love to write run-ons. I see them in your writing all the time, and it's something that we really need to fix. We really got to come to an understanding of run-ons because one, like with everything else, it's a big thing that they're going to ask you about on the ACT. And like I said, it's everywhere in your writing. I see it all the time. So we really got to we got to come to an understanding of run-ons so we can fix them on the ACT and so we can fix them in our own writing. Okay? So quick review. Before we get into run-ons, which are sentences that we want to avoid, let's just review real quick the sentences that we want to work on building, right? In lessons 2 and 3, we talked about simple sentences, compound sentences, and then complex, right? Simple is just one independent clause, right? One independent clause. Independent clauses can stand on their own. So a simple sentence is when you've just got one independent clause by itself. Right? There are many Spanish language schools in Guatemala. One independent clause, so that's a simple sentence. Then compound is when you take two independent clauses and you join them together. Right? We've got independent clause here, and you join them together with a comma and a fanboy. Right? And then in lesson 3, we talked about complex sentences, right? Complex sentence is when you've got a dependent clause and you make it into a complete sentence by adding an independent clause, right? Because dependent clauses can't stand on their own, right? But so they can be a good sentence if you add an independent clause to go with them. So when you've got the dependent clause that goes first, you do D, comma, I, right? If the independent clause comes first, like here, you don't need the comma, right? So a couple examples. Although I didn't study for my quiz, right, dependent clause, I still got a 100. Independent clause. So this is a complex sentence because it's dependent and independent, right? Since I drank spoiled milk, right, dependent clause, that can't be its own sentence. It's not a complete thought. If I said, hey guys, since I drank spoiled milk, you would wait for me to finish my sentence, right? It's not a complete thought. You would say, well, what happened since you drank spoiled milk, right? So dependent clause, since I drank spoiled milk, I was throwing up all night. So dependent, comma, independent, okay? So those are the 3 kinds of good sentences that we want to focus on writing, right? Simple, compound, complex. Now, like I said, those are the 3 that we want to focus on writing. However, you guys love to write run-ons. They're everywhere in your writing. And we really got to rein them in. We got to focus on fixing all these run-ons. So what is a run-on exactly, right? What am I talking about? Well, let's take a look. Okay? Excuse me. Sorry about that. Okay, so run-ons. This is what a run-on is. A run-on is when you have 2 independent clauses. So remember, 2 sentences that can stand on their own. Right? Remember, an independent clause can be its own sentence. So when you've got 2 independent clauses, so independent clause, and you try to put them together in the same sentence without the right punctuation, right? You guys do this all the time. You take one sentence that could be on its own and another sentence that could be on its own, and you try to put it together in the same sentence. You know what you love to do? When you've got an independent clause, sentence that can be on its own, and another independent clause, you guys love to put a comma right here. No, no, no. You cannot do this. Do not do this. This is wrong. This is wrong, right? You cannot put an independent clause and an independent clause with a comma. That is a run-on. It's called a comma splice, a comma splice run-on. We want to avoid these, and we got to fix them. Like I said, you will see this on the ACT. You will see this in your own writing. We've got to come to an understanding of this so we can improve. So we can improve on the ACT and we can improve our writing. So let's look at some examples. The sun is blazing, right? That's an independent clause. That could be its own sentence. What's it like outside? Well, the sun is blazing, right? Independent clause. You should put on sunblock. That's an independent clause. And that could be its own sentence, right? What should I do? You should put on sunblock. So you've got independent clause and just a comma. No, this is a run-on, right? This is a run-on. You cannot do this. This is wrong. We want to avoid this. Let's take a look at another example. I left the game at halftime. That could be its own sentence, right? That's a complete thought. Right? Independent clause. My friends decided to stay. That could be its own sentence, right? So two sentences, two independent clauses, two clauses that could be on their own, and you've just got them connected with a comma. No, 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 right? This is wrong. This is a run-on. We want to avoid this, okay? Let's look at one more example. We have 3 tests tomorrow, right? Independent clause, that could be its own sentence. I'm starting to feel overwhelmed. This could be its own sentence, right? How do you feel? I feel overwhelmed, right? Independent clause, that could be its own sentence. And so you've got independent clause and independent clause, and you can't just put these together in the same sentence, right? You can't just connect them with a comma. This is wrong. This is a run-on. This is what we want to avoid. You guys love to write these, like I said, but we want to learn how to avoid them. So the question is, if we want to avoid these run-ons, right? If we got all these if we've got all these run-ons, right? How do we fix them? How do we avoid them? Well, let's talk about that. Okay? Let's talk about the 4 ways to fix run-ons. Okay? There are 4 main ways to fix run-ons. You can put a period, right? Put a period. Just instead of making one sentence, make it 2 separate sentences. Put a period, right? Another way that you can join them is with a semicolon, right? Semicolon. You could throw a semicolon between 2 independent clauses, right? And that'll fix the run-on. You can use a comma and a fanboy. You can use a comma and a fanboy. We talked about that with compound sentences, right? When you use fanboys, you put them between 2 independent clauses. So if you've got 2 independent clauses that you want to put in the same sentence, you can connect them with a comma and a fanboy, okay? Or you can make one of the clauses dependent. If you've got 2 independent clauses in the same sentence, connected by a comma, you've got yourself a run-on. How do I fix it? Well, I can make one of these clauses dependent, right? Now I've got dependent, comma, on. And I've got a complex sentence, okay? So again, these are 4 ways to fix run-ons. 4 ways to fix run-ons. A period, a semicolon, comma, fanboy, or make one of the clauses dependent. Remember all those subordinated conjunctions. Before, after, if, when, whenever, although, even though, since, right? All those subordinated conjunctions that help make a clause dependent, we can put those, okay? So let's keep those 4 in mind. Let's keep those 4 in mind, and let's look at our our 3 run-ons here. So let's remember the 4 ways to fix them. We can use a period, we can use a semicolon, right? We can use a comma fanboy, or we can use make one of the clauses dependent. Okay. So let's take a look at this first one, right? The sun is blazing. You should put on sunblock. How can we fix this? Well, we can put a period right here, right? Or we can put a semicolon, right? Or we could put a comma fanboy, right? What fanboy would work here? What do you think? The sun is blazing, comma, so you should put on sunblock, right? the fanboy so would work there. Okay? If we wanted to make one of these clauses dependent, which one would work? Pause the video if you want to think about it for a second. Look through your notes. Look for all those subordinating conjunctions that help us make dependent clauses. But you know what I think would be a good one here? Because the sun is blazing, you should put on sunblock. Or one that means the same as because, since the sun is blazing, you should put on sunblock. Right? Make sense? Okay. So those are the 4 ways. How about the next one? I left the game at halftime. My friends decided to stay. Independent clause with just a comma. So that's a run-on. Right? So how are we gonna fix that? Again, we could put a period, right? And make this capital, right? We could put a semicolon, right? That works. That fixes the run-on. What if we wanted to use a fanboy? What fanboy should we use? I left the game at halftime, comma, but, or, comma, yet, my friends decided to stay. Right? Make sense? Okay? How about if we wanted to make one of these clauses dependent? Right? Although I left the game early, or even though I left the game early, right? We make that first clause dependent. Although I left the game early, even though I left the game early, though I left the game early, my friends decided to stay, right? So we put this subordinating conjunction. Now this first clause is dependent, and this clause is independent, and we've got a good complex sentence. We fixed our run-on, right? How about the last one? We have 3 tests tomorrow. I'm starting to feel overwhelmed. Again, we could put a period. Or we could put a semicolon, right? Or we can use a fanboy. Which fanboy would work? We have 3 tests tomorrow, comma, so I'm starting to feel overwhelmed, right? Make sense? And again, we can make this first clause dependent. Since we have 3 tests tomorrow. Or because we have 3 tests tomorrow. Right? Now these clauses are dependent. They can't be their own sentence. But we've got a dependent clause and an independent clause. And we fix that run-on. Okay? So, again, this is really, really, really crucial. Right? These run-ons, where you have 2 clauses that could be in their own sentence, and you guys try to put them together in the same sentence, and you just try to put a comma. No, no, no. Do not do that anymore. Right? These are wrong. We try to avoid these. And remember the 4 ways to fix them. Period, semicolon, comma, fanboy, or making one clause dependent. Okay? Makes sense? So again, if you feel like you understood the video, you're ready for the quiz, go ahead and take quiz number 4 on run-ons. If you'd like to watch the video again, go ahead and do that. Then take the quiz. Okay? And bring any questions to class. Okay? Good luck.